Mr. McCord, I was disappointed that for the second year in a row, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, was not fully funded in the department's budget request. Understanding that we cannot get into specific budget figures in this forum, can you discuss why AARO was not fully funded?
Senator, I don't have any information from my colleague, Undersecretary Moultrie, that he needed additional funding in this area. It's a relatively new office we're standing up, so I was under the impression, I am under the impression that we have adequate funding for the relatively new state of this, but I will double back with him if there's a concern.
I need you to send a letter to this committee in writing about why it wasn't fully funded. Several senators signed a letter to Secretary Hicks asking that it be fully funded in this budget, and we specified in a classified annex exactly what funding wasn't being met. And it's operational funding. It's basic operational funding. So I'm highly concerned about this. Secretary Austin, the incidents last month involving the Chinese high-altitude balloon and the 3 unknown objects highlighted the need for us to continue to improve our understanding of UAPs over U.S. airspace. Do you intend to ensure AARO receives full funding in the future?
I will, Senator, and in this budget we've asked for $11 million in support of the office of that initiative.
That is not the budget request.
Okay.
Will you investigate why the budget request isn't being met and be part of the response to the committee?
I will.
Thank you. Secretary Austin, on March 7, Qin Gang, the Chinese foreign minister, said that the U.S. and China are heading toward inevitable, quote, confrontation and conflict, end of quote. This comes as the STRATCOM commander testified that the PRC seeks to match or in some areas surpass quantitative and qualitative parity with the United States in terms of nuclear weapons, end of quote. During the Cold War, the U.S. and the Soviet Union developed lines of communication to prevent escalation or outright hostilities during heightened tensions and developed norms and mechanisms to avoid miscalculations. How would you characterize your relationship with your PRC counterpart, and what steps are you taking to reduce the risk of miscalculations during a period of heightened competition between our countries?
Well, thanks, Senator. I think you've heard me say 2 things. The first thing is that what the chairman said earlier, that I don't see conflict as being imminent or inevitable. But I do think it's important that leaders and great powers have the ability to talk to each other, to manage escalation, to manage crisis. You've seen me reach out to my former counterpart, Minister of Defense Wei, who has now moved on, and encourage him to keep the lines of communication open. He has now been replaced by a new minister, and I've yet to have the ability to engage him, but I will continue to make sure that we reach out. I do think that's critical.
Secretary Austin, we have international legal structures to address the conduct of our forces in war. While we have international treaties that govern the use of space, there's ongoing debate about whether these treaties would apply during an armed conflict and what types of counterspace weapons are permissible. What steps is the department taking in coordination with the Department of State to reinforce international norms and whether we can safely rely on our use of space assets both legally and lethally during a conflict?
Well, this is an issue that the interagency of our administration, we continue to engage on, and Secretary Blinken, as you know, also has engaged our allies and partners on this issue at the UN and in other fora. We think it's important. The administration thinks it's important, and this is something that we'll continue to work on. So.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate the policies you issued on March 22nd supporting our military families, and it's critical to their well-being and ability to retain strong military force. DoD's own surveys show that 24% of our service members experience food insecurity. Last year, I met with military families on Staten Island who spoke about the challenges they face in basically putting food on the table to feed their kids. However, very few service members are considered eligible for basic needs allowance or the BNA under existing BNA programs, since BAH is included in family income calculations. Can you tell me how you intend to ensure that food insecurity in military families have access to the BNA or other measures?
Well, we'll have the authority next year to move to a higher number, a higher percentage, 150%. We'll actually move before we're required to move. We plan to move in July. That will allow us to help more families. But you've seen us, with your support, Senator, you've seen us ask for a pay raise last year of 4.6%. You've seen us raise BAH amounts, and you've seen us work to get child care costs down. So we're trying to increase the resources and reduce the strain on families, and hopefully that total equation will create benefits for our families and our troops.
But will you consider removing BAH from the calculation for BNA?
We will do whatever feasible, what we're allowed to do by law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Cotton, please.